And I'll even train my staff to say something like, listen, I got to get all this boring stuff out of the way just so we can get you in here. Like, what's your date of birth? What's your insurance information? Oh, do you have that handy? Yada, yada, yada. Is there a doctor you want us to send the notes to? But then you're setting it up as, again, you're kind of reinforcing this idea that we're not just running you through the mill. We're not just doing what everybody else does. This is stuff we have to get to do the job. But what's really important is all the stuff you just told me.
And I've been hanging around Rafi Salazar for a while now. I've been following his stuff, and we've been on each other's programs a few times. And it was no surprise I hit up Rafi when we were starting to talk about cancellation reduction, because he's the king of humanizing healthcare and patient outcomes. Mate, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'll do the formal introduction. He's an occupational therapist, owner of an outpatient PT/OT clinic, which is ProActive Rehabilitation and Wellness in beautiful Augusta, Georgia. Published author and principal of Rehab U Practice Solutions. And he helps clients attract, acquire, engage, and retain more patients and clients. And his work on telehealth has been discussed in Forbes. He's also the host of the Better Outcomes Show, a podcast that explores the possibilities of a new healthcare. And he's the author of Better Outcomes, A Guide to Humanizing Healthcare, which is his latest book. And I loved Rafi's tagline, making healthcare human again.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. And it fits right in, Rafi, doesn't it? Because making healthcare human and humanizing healthcare and experience, it's really the key to reducing cancellations, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. We live in a very, for lack of a better word, a very systematized or abstracted world, right? We can order up, food via Uber Eats or something like that, or Grubhub, and it's all very transactional. And healthcare in particular is it's very human centric, right? It's one person helping another person ultimately. So if we go too far into or dive straight into systems and technology and tools, which are all great and wonderful, we take the risk of really abstracting away the main benefit and the main value of healthcare, which is that human experience.
And I know our whole program is about cancellation reduction, but
oh yeah,
but everything we're doing here in humanizing healthcare is making the experience personal, so they don't cancel. Is that one of the positives of being more humanized is we reduce cancellation rates?
Yeah, that's the ancillary benefit, right? I always tell people if you do what's right at the beginning, you'll end up with the business metrics you want in the end. And it is true very much so when we talk about everything, not just scheduling and how we onboard patients and clients, but the way we interact with them, the way we communicate with them, all of that kind of stuff. We do it with the focus of making it human-centric or person-centric. The ancillary benefit is that these patients and clients are more engaged. They want to show up. They have buy-in before they even make their first appointment. They want to show up and they want to be there because they feel this connection. They feel that this organization or this person that I had the conversation with really cares about me. So I'm already emotionally invested in showing up to that first appointment, right?
So how do we do that? Give us the guide. How do we humanize our practices so that people do show up and don't cancel, and maybe that they feel bad if they have to ring up and cancel, because that's all part of it. I suppose they have to have a relationship. Yeah. I don't want to let Rafi down because he's doing this for me. Is that kind of so how do we do it? How do we humanize this thing? Give us the guide, Rafi.
It all starts with understanding what, this is not an idea that's unique to me, but understanding the touch points, right? Where are the places along your patient lifestyle cycle journey or this relationship journey that a client or a patient might have with your organization? What are those points along that journey where they have an interaction with you or your staff? And you have to understand those, because then you can systematize them and make them more human, right? So a common touch point is the initial call, right? Somebody rings up and they might Google solutions for back pains in, Augusta, Georgia, and they'll get a list of providers. That first touch point is they call the clinic, or maybe they land on your website, whatever it happens to be. But that messaging, the way they're greeted, the type of information that you ask for and the order in which you ask it is very important. And it's one of those main touch points that either gets a patient or client to say, yes, I'm going to go with, ProActive in my case, or no, I'm going to, keep on going down the line to see what else Google has to offer me.
So give us some what's done poorly. Give us some examples of some rubbish interactions, and then maybe what do we do instead? So what's some meat and potatoes that we can use in
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest downfall in any of this is making the entire process what I call a top-down approach, which you find in most any organization, right? I need to get the information that I need to do my job. So I need your date of birth, I need insurance if you've got it, I need your doctor, I need how you're going to pay for it, your contact information. Then after I've got all of that, tell me about what's going on with you, and maybe maybe we're a right fit, maybe we're not, who knows. I really don't care about that because I got all the information I already need to do my job, the input side. So that's a very top-down approach, and it leaves people, maybe 20 years ago, people started to feel like, man, this is not a good experience. Now it's just par for the course. That's what people expect when they call a healthcare organization. They expect they're going to have to fill out 50 pounds of paperwork, hundreds of questionnaires. They're going to have to give over their social security number here in the US, their last four of their card digit, all that kind of stuff. They're going to have to give all of that stuff before they're able to talk to a clinician or talk to someone who really cares about them to describe what's going on and whether it even makes sense to book an appointment in the first place. So taking this traditional kind of top-down approach, we're going to get all the administrative demographic information that we need. And then maybe if there's time, move on to what's important to you, the client and the patient. That top-down approach is kind of just what everybody does. So any kind of change up you can do to that is already going to kind of set you apart from the competition. And then if you do it right, man, these patients and clients come in and they already have increased expectations and hope about the solutions you're going to provide for their situation.
I love what you said, Rafi, that you said the admin feels like they've done their job. Like you ring up the practice and I'll get your name and your date of birth. So I feel like that's my job, but that's because we probably haven't taught them well enough that the job is actually, before they even get to that, they've got to humanize this call. They've got to, Rafi, how can we help you, Rafi? What have you done?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a better option. So we're reversing the script. Get to know them first, and then if once you make that connection, then you get the other stuff. Is that a better approach?
Exactly. Yeah, we're doing a bottom-up approach, and the reason we're doing it is twofold, right? The first one is obviously we're centering the entire interaction on that client or that patient that's calling the clinic, which has all the benefits that I outlined earlier. The second reason we do that is because in a world of commoditized healthcare, where physios are a dime a dozen, and there's they're like Waffle Houses here in the US. There's one on every corner. What tends to get pushed, what tends to get focused on is the physiotherapy service itself. I'm going to give you these exercises, I'm going to do whatever, I'm going to provide this service, yada yada yada, and it's very vanilla, very bland. But in any area or industry, the specialists in that industry don't just take any client, right? They're discerning whether or not it's what we have here is a suitable enough fit to take the next step. And sometimes that next step is an appointment. And sometimes that next step is, no, we really can't help you with what you've got going on, but I know, 3 or 4 other specialists that might be in this line of work that could help you out. So it positions us as the clinic managers or the clinic owners or the clinicians. It takes us out of this role of kind of this vendor, this waiter, what can I do for you? What's your order? How can I fix your back, your pain, whatever it is? And it puts us in a position of kind of an expert advisor or an expert clinician or practitioner, which is really what we should be. And it makes us look at the situation and look at the client and say, okay, typically we do not work with XYZ, whatever it is, but we have a very deep expertise in, chronic low back pain. And if what you're telling me on this call makes sense, then it might make sense for us to make an appointment with you. And then we could kind of go from there, take an in-depth evaluation. But until we get some of this information out of the way, kind of screen you, pre-qualify you, if you would, then it doesn't make sense for me to get all of the admin information, all of the insurance and anything like that. So it sets the interaction apart again at a different level from this is just you calling a physio clinic to this is me calling Rafi Salazar and he's the expert at XYZ and I'm hoping that he's got a slot for me, right?
So what happens at ProActive Rehab? So script wise, if I ring up ProActive Rehab, your practice, and I say, I've got a problem with my shoulder, I need to make an appointment, or at what time what are they asked to screen them? Well, before we get further, Rafi, I just ask a few things about you. What happens? What's the admin scripts that you use at your practices?
Sure, yeah, and I outline all of this in the book, Better Outcomes, a Guide for Humanizing Healthcare. It's a referral onboarding process framework, and I've got some specific questions in there. I didn't put the exact script that we use in the clinic because I feel like we're always kind of updating it, but it basically has 7 steps. And the first step is we call it the narrative experience of the person calling. So these are questions like somebody calls and says, hey, do you take Blue Cross Blue Shield? Or, I've got shoulder pain. Do you take my insurance? Our response should be, and we try to track this as much as we can, like it should be, let's get to your insurance. I promise we're going to cover the insurance question, but first, let me make sure it's even worth me going and getting all that information from you. Why don't you tell me what's going on? So the first question is always, tell me a little bit about what's going on. How's this affecting your daily life? How do you feel about XYZ, this pain, this limitation, your shoulder? How is this affecting you? And you kind of get the prospective clients experience, their subjective and narrative experience. We want to get their story, so to speak. We want to know how this happened. We want to know, how it's impacting them, and then what they think or how they feel about it before we move on to the next step, which is, get the referral information. How did you hear about us? What made you reach out to us in particular versus, 15 other PT clinics down the line? Because that's information that we want to use later, right? Right.
Yep. So we're getting the narrative experience, which I love. That we talk in our world, a significant emotional event.
Yes.
Why did you contact us, Rafi? What's the big deal here? Why now? Why us and why now? Like it's just that, as you said, that narrative experience, and you've just hit it on the head because the admin team, if someone brings up, do you take Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever they say, the admin, if they're not trained, will think their job is to answer that question.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've been in the clinic before, in many clinics, where I walk by and somebody, picks up the phone and they say, oh no, we don't take that insurance, and hang up. Bye, have a good day, hang up. And I'm like, what just happened? Well, they asked if we took their insurance and we're not in network with that insurance. I'm like, no, you should always put that question back. Because if you get to the point where you and the prospective client feel like this is a good fit, then at some level, the insurance doesn't matter. Right? Yep. Because there's 15 other physios and they're all doing the same thing, but you're the one that can fix their problem.
Yeah. What do you think of this one? I say to our guys, when someone rings, they could say any number of things. How much is a consult? Are you open Saturdays? Do you treat shoulder pain? Do you take my insurance? There's a million questions they could ask. And the mistake the admin person makes every time is they think they've got to answer the question. And what I say to our guys is, that's not the real question. Regardless of what they said to you, their real question is, can you help me?
Exactly.
But they just didn't say it the same way. Am I right, or have I missed something?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I tell our folks too. I say, listen, at the end of the day, like they might ask about price, they might ask about insurance, but what they're really trying to ask you, and they might not even have their own understanding. Like they don't have enough of an idea of how to ask it. But what they want to ask is, do you have the solution for my problem? Now, for them, they're thinking that their problem is that they need physiotherapy, or that their doctor said, maybe go check out a physiotherapist. But the reality is they have like low back pain and it's really limiting them. And they don't know how to ask it because they're thinking about insurance and money and scheduling and all of that kind of stuff. But the real question they're asking is, I've got this low back pain. How can you fix it for me?
Yeah. So I'm going through the 7 steps. We've got to get the narrative experience. Number two is to get the referral info.
Yeah.
So once we found out, well, that's great, Rafi. I've got a good handle on what you've got at the moment. Can I ask where did you find out about us? So how did you end up calling us? So that's the next step.
Yes. And once you get over that hump, when you get that information, oh, we did a Google search, or, oh, my friend, 3 years ago saw your clinic and they speak very highly of you, whatever it is, you move on to kind of the next level, is the third step, which is we try to understand their goals for treatment. Now, the simple question would be, well, okay, so what are your goals? Like, what do you hope to get out of treatment? What's your goal? What would you like to do that you can't do now? There's various ways that you can ask this question. Sometimes we'll say something like, what would you like to be able to do after you get treatment from us? Sometimes we just rely on the tried and true, like, what's your goal for treatment? And then you be quiet and you take notes, and you take all of this. I should preface this by saying all of this information should be written down by the admin staff. They should be writing this down. We have like a little framework that we hand out to our clients and that our staff use here at ProActive. They fill it all out, and that gets scanned and put into the record so that the physio that's seeing, or the clinician that's seeing this client, has a chance to review it before they even come into the clinic. That way, it just doesn't die there. We're making this a person-centered approach all the way through. So the PT or the OT, whoever it is reviewing this information and then able to bring this up in the appointment with the client there then in the clinic. But yeah,
sorry, computerized or handwritten?
We do it so they write it down on a little paper. We just scan it and put it in the file. I mean, it's not like we're not super high tech. It's not going into some dashboard and all of that. Oh, of course you could create that if you wanted to.
So step three was we've gone through the goals of treatment.
Yeah.
And what do you want to get out of this, out of our involvement with you or your treatment? Where do we go then?
Right after that, which tends to be overlooked by people, they feel like, okay, if we got the goals, then we're good to go, would be the expectations. We want to understand that prospective clients' expectations about treatment. And so this might be something like, what do you hope to get out of treatment, or how do you see treatment helping? Or if they've had treatment for this in the past, which is one of the questions that might have come up in there when they're giving you their narrative experience. I hurt my shoulder. I've been to several physios before. I've been to a doctor, yada, yada, yada. The one question about expectations might be, what have you had done for this in the past? And what did you think helped? And what did you know didn't help? Because what we're trying to do, and what obviously, or not obviously, but what often happens is you do all this stuff right, and then you get into the actual interaction with the client, and there's a mismatch in the expectations that causes the client to not show up again. Because maybe they thought, I need dry needling for my shoulder. And maybe that dry needling is not going to fix their shoulder, or whatever it is. But instead of having a conversation with the client about it, we just kind of breeze over it. And it's not because we don't want to have that conversation. It's because we never knew to ask them, right? We didn't know that they had this expectation that, okay, you think that physiotherapy needs to be 3 times a week for 45 minutes, whatever their expectation was in the past, because it allows you to do one of two things. One, it allows you to work some of those things into the treatment plan so that the client feels like they're getting what they're expecting, or it allows you to address those expectations at the beginning and say, listen, many physios might try to, do ultrasound right here on your shoulder because they think it helps, yada, yada, yada. We practice whatever, our method of treatment uses a different approach. And if you're willing to go with me on this different approach, we can, we'll work with you. But if you don't understand the expectations from the beginning, you risk breezing over something that could be very, very important to that prospective client and make them maybe show up for their initial evaluation, initial consult, and then never show up again because you didn't fulfill their expectations.
So is it the admin's job to expand on the expectations, or just to ask them and get them down?
We just get them to write it all down, because then the clinician can say, okay. I mean, there are some things that are, especially the ones that have been trained for a while and been with the clinic for a while, have a pretty good understanding of the way the clinicians approach care in a certain respect. So there might be a time where it's appropriate for an admin staff to say, oh, I've talked to, Rafi a lot, and he works a lot with hand there, in hands with this specific issue. And, he tends to really think that XYZ is the most appropriate treatment, but I'll let him, chat with you about that if you want. And that's
Okay,
more than
but
fine.
so what I'm liking is they're arriving at the practice, which again is making sure that first visit is sharp, because
Exactly.
they'll say, look, I know you mentioned to Mary when you spoke to her last week that this was what you wanted to get done. Just to let you know, this is our philosophy.
Exactly.
Just to make sure we're getting what you wanted here. So you're going in preloaded with information, which I love.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't ever want to go into a situation blind.
Yeah, one of our favourites, Rafi, we used to put on the bottom of all our new patient intake forms. Now where have you been, or where have you been previously for treatment? What did you really like about your past practices, and what didn't you like? And we're looking for those. So you make sure you look through that, and you make sure you don't do what the other mob did wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're getting the information straight up. All right. So we've got expectations, and that's part of our session, and we've got a couple to go. What were the other ones once you've got expectations?
The next one is all that stuff that people normally put at the front end, all the administrative stuff. Okay, we've gotten your goals, we've gotten your expectations. It does sound like, we can help you out. So why don't I just get you scheduled? Let's get something on the books. So it's let's get you scheduled, and then you get all the demographics, your date of birth, your address, contact information, payment, insurance information if it's needed. The big one that a lot of people have been getting onto recently, which I like, is getting the email address, because then you can send online intake paperwork and all the important stuff that people expect now. But it's getting all of the demographics, all the administrative stuff. Let's get you on the books. Let me get all this. And I'll even train my staff to say something like, listen, I got to get all this boring stuff out of the way just so we can get you in here. What's your date of birth? What's your insurance information? Oh, do you have that handy? Yada, yada, yada. Is there a doctor you want us to send the notes to? But then you're setting it up as, again, you're kind of reinforcing this idea that we're not just running you through the mill. We're not just doing what everybody else does. This is stuff we have to get to do the job. But what's really important is all the stuff you just told me, your narrative experience, your goals, your expectations, all of that. That's really the important stuff. And now we just got to go through the, checking the boxes to make sure you're legit when you show up to the clinic.
And what I'm hearing, Rafi, I mean, connection, the connection they have with the front desk team, who's probably also, if they're really trained well, oh, you're in great hands. Rafi's an expert with that.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
There's something that, and the person says, I'm in the right place. So the chance of no showing is pretty low. You've got all their details. So, and they know a bit about you, rather than just making up booked a time, 2:00 Friday with a guy named Rafi.
Exactly. Yeah. I tell people all the time, the front, if you're going to spend money anywhere in training, if you can hire, retain, and train really good front office staff, you're going to be in a much better place, because those are the gatekeepers for your business, whether they understand it or not. The way they're interacting with prospective clients and with patients either is a big thumbs up or it's a big cancellation button,
Yeah. So we've done our admin stuff, the stuff that normally came first.
Yep.
There's a couple of things to go. What do we do then?
The second to last one is you basically throw out there any potential reason why they might not come back, any potential objections, right? So we call it answering any questions they still may have. So this is you might say something like, are there any questions or concerns that you have that I haven't already addressed? That way we know for a fact we've cleaned them out, right? Any lingering expectations that they might have had, any concerns that they might have had about location or about price or about whatever it happens to be, we give them one last opportunity to kind of give us that information so that we can prepare for that and address it beforehand.
Got it. And it might be the logistics, what to wear.
Exactly.
Where to park.
Things that you haven't even thought about. Yeah, exactly. Usually we'll get through some of this. And the clinic that we have is located behind a couple banks. So, we'll tell them that at the front end, and they'll, inevitably somebody will say, so am I allowed to park in a bank parking lot, or do I have to come back to a different area? We're like, oh yeah, of course. We always forget that. Let's come on back here. This is where you're going to park, yada, yada, yada. So you're getting all those last minute things taken care of too.
And what Rafi's done, he's reducing any possible roadblock that will stop the person from thinking, oh, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to park. I don't know what to wear. Any of those things could be a factor in leading to them to be a no-show.
Yes, exactly. And it is not uncommon. When I was at the Department of Veterans Affairs running their outpatient clinic, we would get calls all the time from patients that would say, listen, I showed up to the VA and I didn't know where to park, so I just left. Can we reschedule? And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, sure, we could have handled that like 3 weeks ago when we booked you for this appointment, but yeah, sure, well, let's reschedule.
Yeah. Right. And then I think we're at a final stage.
The very, very last step is kind of what we've already done throughout this whole process, but it's you're assuring them that they're in good hands and you want to validate their decision for booking the appointment. So even if it's something as simple as, hey, you're in the right place, we're looking forward to helping you kind of get over this shoulder pain or this whatever pain it is. Our team of clinicians has done a lot of work in this area, and I think they're really going to be able to help you. Boom, that's it.
Right.
You don't have to oversell it here. You're just assuring them that they made the right decision, because a lot of times in any interaction or any economic transaction, people make decisions first and then validate them on the back end. They make a decision based off emotion and then they kind of rationalize it later. And we just kind of want to give them some of that impetus beforehand so that they don't have any buyer's remorse or second guessing themselves after they hang up the phone. Oh, okay, I made this decision to book this appointment, and now they're telling me that these people are great for it and they have this experience, whatever. And it's validating their decision to book the appointment in the first place.
Let me play the devil's advocate here. At any time, do you mention, by the way, Rafi's heavily booked. And make sure you give us 24 hours notice if you can't make that consultation. Is there any mention of cancellation policy during that initial booking conversation?
Only if it comes up, because most of the time we have structured, this comes like hand in hand with this framework, but we've structured times when we've intentionally tried to structure it so that there's a limited capacity for initial consults. So by just the nature of the way we schedule, people are getting booked out a little bit anyways. And sure, we can always make an adjustment here. Oh, maybe we can fit in a consult this week, but I'll have to check with Rafi. We're going to book it, and then we'll just confirm later. So we're already kind of building in the scarcity as it goes out, and it's just kind of implied that these people are the experts. If I cancel this appointment, it might be a week or two before we get back in. Because again, thinking about the difference between a vendor or a commoditized service, you can just go into Walmart or whatever supermarket you go to and pick up coffee off the shelf, right? You can go there and get that, but you can't schedule an appointment with a psychologist, or some kind of big specialist without waiting, without having to jump through some hoops, without having to prove that you're worthy of that appointment or that time or that person's time. So we kind of do that in and of the way we kind of structure our scheduling processes to ensure that there's, even if it's not a real scarcity, that there's a perceived scarcity because of the amount of slots that we make available for appointments.
So it's in the cancellation, the risk is implied. For example, Rafi's heavily booked. Let me see. Oh, we've had a 2:00 cancellation this Friday. I can put you in there. Gee, that was lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of, it's implied scarcity anyway. So they were thinking. Now, admin team will say, I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Admin team will say, there's not another single patient in Friday. This is a new practice. There's gaps from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. The admin team will maybe struggle to say, oh, we've had a cancellation at 11 o'clock. That's lucky, when there's no one else in the diary.
Yeah.
How do we get them to do that? Or is that, I'm not talking ethical. Is it right to do that, Rafi?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would lie about a cancellation. But because we have set up when the appointment, like we only take consults, let's just call it, 9 o'clock, noon, and 3, whatever. We don't tell clients that. But if they get booked out, then the staff member says, okay, our next available appointment slot for a consult would be, and because you can tailor how much you put available, it can be, oh, well, we only take one consult a day for, every day this week. The client doesn't need to know that. They just know that, okay, your next available client consult is next Tuesday. Hopefully you'll be there, right? Because in the event of, and again, like looking at the healthcare interaction or really any economic transaction, it can go one of two ways. It's either very commoditized, where you're looking at grabbing something off the shelf at a supermarket, or something specialized. And you need to delineate the difference between this is something you can book anytime you want to this is something that's highly specialized, and there is scarcity there. You can't just ring up and get an appointment today.
Yeah. Which if your poorly trained admin is saying, oh yes, Rafi can see you at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 1 o'clock on Friday. Which would you like?
He's got nothing going on. He's really not an expert at all, right?
He's not very good at all. Yeah, it's a classic, isn't it? Can I then, being again the advocate for the listener, you've gone through a 7-step process here for admin. How long does that take? The phone rings, and for us to go through that 7 steps, because they're going to say, I've got the phone ringing, I've got 4 people in front of me. How am I going to get through those 7 steps? How long is that going to take?
Yeah. It takes somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes. And I tell my staff that at the clinic, and I tell staff at the clinics that I consult with, that's okay. Because again, if what we're trying to do is change our perception in the minds of the client from just your average everyday physio to a specialist, it takes a while to get a hold of a specialist. Sometimes you might have to be on the phone for a little bit, or you might have to call back twice. You might have to leave a message and wait to get called back. As long as you're handling those follow-ups in a timely manner, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I'm sorry, I saw that you called us at 11 o'clock. I was on the phone with another prospective client trying to get them in and trying to get them booked. Now that I've got time, let me dive into you, and we'll give you just as much care as we gave the person before. But we do try to take a very personal, hands-on approach here, and we don't want to just take 2 minutes on the phone with you. We want to get to know you a little bit before we book an appointment. And most patients are totally fine with that because they understand it. They live in a world where most doctors are spending 7 minutes on average with the patient. So anybody that's going to take a little bit of extra time with them already has their thumbs up and their vote of approval, right? You're
fighting that fear there, Rafi, of the owner thinking if I haven't made that appointment then and there, they've gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
So you've got you as the owner have to decide, am I going to be a humanized care-based practice, or am I going to take that quick booking and hope like hell they turn up?
It is a decision. Yeah. It's a strategic decision. And as with every strategic decision, there's risk on both ends, right? You're prioritizing some things at the potential loss of another thing. But the reality is, if they're going to be a right fit client for you anyways, they're going to book, they're going to stay, they're going to be there. If they're not going to be a right fit for client for you, you don't want them on the schedule anyways, because they're going to take up a spot, they're going to cancel, they're going to no-show, whatever it is. You don't want that client on your schedule because just because they're on the schedule, unless they're actually showing up and swiping their credit card or paying you for that consult, it doesn't do you any good. So I'd rather have half as many people scheduled that I know are going to show up, that I know are going to be loyal, that I know are going to be bought in, than a whole bunch of people and thinking like, oh man, I'm going to be reining in the money here. And then half of them cancel the day of or no show the day of. I mean, that's not a place to be either.
So I assume, Rafi, in your best clients' practices, they've got a dedicated phone answering person sitting out the back somewhere who's not face-to-face being interrupted by people, by people checking out, etc.
Yeah. So you either have one person that's their whole job, handling intake, handling calls, handling, depending on the marketing system you got in the back end, handling leads and all of appointment inquiries online. Or you at some point you're going to grow, right? And you're going to have people that can do both and that kind of thing. And it's, when you're small, it can be difficult. But as you grow, you want to think about adding in a person that their whole job is, we call it the new business development person, but the person that they're converting leads into clients, and that's what they're doing for you.
I knew a chiropractor once, Rafi, he had a concierge. He had a dedicated meter and greeter.
Yeah.
Job, would you like a coffee? It was the experience. It wasn't just coming to a healthcare. He's the maitre d'. Would you like a coffee? Would you like a drink? Can I get you a cab to go home? Like, this is the concierge practice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I love what you laid out here. I know we're running out of time. Any other big takeaways for humanizing? Now we've humanized the front and the show rate. We'd expect the show rate to be high. They get then any other personalized? Do they get a phone call? Do they get what other personalization you're going to put into this?
So one thing that as part of just the after this onboarding, what happens that we do is we always, because we're in the US and most people have insurance or don't have insurance or whatever, a lot of people have this question about how much it's going to cost. So what we end up doing is we validate or verify everybody's benefits, and then we ensure that we call that person 24 to 48 hours before their appointment to give them an update. Say, hey, we ran your benefits. This is how much it's going to cost, yada, yada, yada. So we give them all that information up front. And then we also call and or text to remind them of their appointment, right? And again, if you're collecting their email address and sending out an online intake, which everyone should be doing because they're super easy and convenient and they flow right into an EMR, the client is already getting that referral or that reminder information anyways. Oh, I've got to go get that. I've got to do that paperwork for Rafi because I got this shoulder pain, right?
Yeah.
So there should be multiple systems.
Have you ever sent a video message? Like as a video to patients? Hey, Rafi here, just looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday for our consultation.
We've thought about it, but we haven't gotten there yet. I have had a couple clients that have done that. And they're usually like the ones that have made it work really well are the solar practitioners that are, they're intentionally limiting the amount of consults they're taking on. So they've got a little bit more time to do that kind of stuff. And it is great. I mean, the patients show up like way on board because they got this personalized message, which is wonderful. As you scale, it can be a little bit more difficult.
I did mention in one of the other sessions, I think that the orthopedic surgeon who was ringing all of his new patients the week before, personally ringing them, hey, Rafi, just making sure you're okay. It's Dr. Jones here. Looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Everything will be fine. Like he does that personally to all of his patients for the following week. And I remember speaking to him, there's no marketing going on. He doesn't have to do any marketing because my surgeon rang me. Surgeon rang me.
Yeah, we have a pediatrician. So I've got 5 kids, and one of our kids had an issue, something or other. I can't remember what it was, but our pediatrician called us. It was like 5:30 that evening. Called and said, "Hey, I was just checking on Joseph. You know, I noticed he was in here and he saw one of my partners, yada yada yada." And my wife hung up the phone and was like, "We're going to be with this doctor forever because he took the time to call about our son." You know, like that's a big deal. So anytime you can do it,
humanizing healthcare. And what I love, Rafi, from what you did then, that therapists sometimes, and even admin, they're sometimes scared to ring patients. Sometimes they don't like ringing patients. You tell them you're going to ring every new patient to see how they're going. They'll be traumatized. They think it's a marketing exercise. Or ringing your past client list.
Yeah.
They think I'm not going to do that. That's just salesy. They'll think I'm pushy and needy. You got to get over that, don't you?
Yeah,
like
well, and
service.
We do try to couch this all under the idea of we're building a relationship with these people. So sometimes it happens very, very naturally. We've had folks that, you know, have fallen off the schedule because their wife had a stroke or their spouse had some kind of health event or had some kind of event going on at work that kept them away. Like our admin staff will call and be like, "Hey, it's Mr. So-and-so. We just really wanted to follow up. We knew your wife went in the hospital. We wanted to follow up and see how y'all were doing. Let us know if there's anything we can do, yada, yada, yada." Because those relationships get built naturally if you're doing it right. And
we're humanizing healthcare.
We tell people that it's a relationship. It is not, while it does lead to new business, that's not the end. That's not the main reason we're doing it. We're doing it because these are people that we have relationships with. And if they so happen to need our services, then that's just a byproduct of us doing that, right?
Rafi, I love what you laid out. Admin team's such an important part of this gig, getting them to show up. You're reducing cancellations by making sure they have a humanized experience and they show up. But how can people find out more about you? Where do they go to get the full Rafi deal?
Sure. You can find us at rehabupracticesolutions.com. So that's rehab, the letter U, practicesolutions.com. That's got everything. Links to the podcast, to the book. It gives you a little calendar link if you want to schedule and have a free call with me and just talk about your practice, what's going on. That's basically all the places.
Beautiful. And underneath this session too, you've given us a PDF guide. Better Outcomes, a guide to humanizing healthcare. So it's part of your scripts, isn't it? What's going in there?
Yes, it's part of chapter 3 in the book, but I'm calling it the Cancellation Framework or the Cancellation Reduction Framework, and I'll get that over to you, and you can make it available to everybody.
Beautiful. I love what you're doing, Rafi. I love everything you're doing. If you're interested in patient experience, 2 weeks you did a program on this as well. Those that haven't got it, I did a session with Vance Morris, the Disney guy, talking about how Disney create experiences.
Oh yeah.
and you watch Disney, you think that's an experience, you know. So,
Yeah, there's a book out there. If Disney ran your hospital, what would you be doing differently?
oh, I love it. If you want to check out that program, healthbusinessprofits.com/patient experience. The code is cancellation. You save $500 if you do that. But Rafi, what was this? What was the URL again for your stuff?
rehabupracticesolutions.com.
I love everything you're doing, mate. Get a hold of Rafi's book, follow him around. If you have to get your team involved in patient experience, because that's where it's about humanizing, and that's how you get people to show up and have a relationship. Rafi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.